Hello everybody, welcome to the fourth lecture of this session on Introduction to Research Techniques. If you remember this picture, this is the difficult path in the direction of truth we are heading through research. On such path, of course, you have different steps like obvious preparation, gathering resources, experience, and then gradually through measurement, analysis, writing, we get closer to the answer of the question. Currently, we are around here, which means we have been gathering information, past articles about what have been already done on the question we are interested in. As a matter of fact, the assignment for the next for this week was to for the ones who haven't worked yet on their question to keep working, especially on the validity, the constraints, and the specification of their question. If you don't remember what this means, I invite you to watch the previous video on this subject. And you had to find at least one relevant academical article on the subject, which means one article, not a newspaper, not just a blog, but really one article written by experts from institutes that is relevant. So relevant means either directly on the subject you are interested in, or a close by subject. If you were advanced, of course, you were invited to read the article and start to draft some ideas from the protocol. Otherwise, I strongly invite you to not work alone. Find a friend, find a classmate, and work together. The different topics that we have come with here are all interesting. So I think regarding the question of the validity of the feasibility, they all somehow will take the form of a survey. So it's quite related to either, let's say, sociology, a little bit of psychology. And I will take some time by focusing on the bibliography. So what I mean by bibliography is also literature review. So once you have a question, a concern, like the 5-6 topics we have seen on the previous slide, you will have to start by doing something we call a review of literature. Review of literature, bibliography, these are synonyms. And it comes from the fact that we learn a lot by watching others do. So this is completely out of the academical scope, but this is exactly what we do, which means we have someone who is like a world expert on this subject. He has been doing that for sometimes decades, and we are newcomers. We watch what he has done, and we are learning. We are going to try to mimic, to reproduce, to do the same. Of course, failing, but gradually learning and improving. So this is one of the main goals of doing a bibliography, which is, as I have presented in the previous videos, to go on the internet, look for articles and read them. How to find these literatures? There are different ways, especially given the constraints that you are experiencing. If you were in the university or a research institute, you could ask your peers, you could go to the library. Fortunately today, you still have access to a huge amount of documentation beyond what you if you could read 1,000 articles per day, your entire life will not be enough. So you can find on the general internet, of course. It's a very good way to start. I strongly invite you also to look on dedicated research websites. So these are the websites that I have given you in the previous lectures, researchgate.net, for instance. And you can also ask your community. So when I say community, I include myself, of course, your friends, and feel free also to ask specialists. So if you find an article or a name of someone working in an institute in Germany and you want to have information, documentation, feel free to write this person a polite email. And believe me, most of the researchers are really happy to share about their work, and they will send you documentation. So documentation through bibliography is something important, and because it's important, it must be done carefully, especially because for this project, we are going to do a small bibliography. Because of the time, because of the level we want to achieve, we are not doing here proper research. It's research as an exercise. Still, the result we are going to do still real research in the sense that we are going to do it seriously. But of course, because we just have a few weeks, it's not possible to do the same as a master, an internship, or of course a PhD. So for this, we are going to do a review of literature, a bibliography, by reading 1 to 3 articles maximum. If you were doing your master, probably that you would need to read 10. If you did your PhD, probably that you would need to read 50, maybe 100. So it is important when you do your bibliography to remember that, of course, it's helpful for your research project, but you need to keep track of what you read. Okay? Imagine you read 100 articles. Each article is a long, complex document. So once you arrive at the article number 25, you will probably have forgotten what you have read at the article 5. And as the time passes on, as you read more and more articles, you will probably, and it's completely normal, forget most of what you have read. For that, it's important to first carefully read the article. So by carefully read, I invite you to do the few steps. One article can be a really complex document. An article, a research article, can sometimes be 20, 30 pages. Sometimes it's just 1 page, depends on the journal. But it can be 20 pages of really dense text, really complex writing. It's not something that is written to be pleasant to read. It's written so that it can transmit information. So it's really dense. So I invite you first to read the abstract. The abstract is the first paragraph that summarizes all the article. If you need to read something, it's at least this. Really important also, learn how to skim the article. So skim through the article, because you don't need to read everything. Depending on your need, you are going to read the article several times. First time to know what it is about, then to know about the methods, then to know about the result, etc., and so on and so forth. Each time you are going to read it differently. So this is what we call skim. And of course, while you read, I strongly invite you to take notes. It doesn't need to be a really clean document, but if you, for each article, you can write a few words, 1 or 2 sentences, like here, the researcher studied this, they did that, oh, interesting statistical method, for instance. And this is important because then when you come back later, when you are in need of ideas, and you say, oh, how did they do that? I don't remember. Or you go through your bibliography and you remember where you can take this really valuable information. So it comes, of course, with organizing the source, which means once you have 10, 20, 100 articles, you need to be really carefully organized. It's not going to be your case for this lecture, but I strongly wish that it's going to be your case someday. Evaluating the sources means making sure the article you read is of good quality. It's a complex question, what is a good and a bad article. It's mostly how do you believe the person who wrote. For that, at this level, we are not going to spend time on that, but it's going to be particularly important when we start to write also our own article. One way to annotate the document, so remember the article you will be reading maybe probably 20 pages. So it's important while you read it to annote. So annote means while writing you just sketch. If you print it, it's just paper. Okay, it's really just paper. So just write in the margin, highlight some sentences, say, okay, oh, here it's the introduction, oh, the scope, important, this is the scope. Here the author talks about the limitation of his study. Here is the conclusion, so that it's easier for you after to walk through the article. The reference is, in the end, it's going to be mostly important once we write our own article. You will have to give the citation of your bibliography. So if you take an information from something, you need to argue where it comes from. And for that, there is one way. In fact, there are different ways, but typically, each bibliography you do, each article you read and you use, should in the end look like that, which means having the name of the person who did that, the year, the title of the study, and the journal, probably some references so that you know how to access this article. Should you publish in a journal in the future? Each journal has its own code for bibliography. So for this work, for this session, we are going to follow one standard, but be aware that the standard may change depending on the journal you read or you write. Tips to consider regarding writing. This is especially going to be important once you write. So remember, the goal when you write an article is to transmit the information. So someone is going to read your work later and to use it. So it must be clear. It's not meant to be necessarily pleasant, but there are still some standards for language level. Comprendre, c'est se sentir capable de faire. This is a sentence by André Gide, a novelist from France, and it means to understand means to feel being able to do. Once you have read all these articles, once you have done this literature review, you will have more and more ideas on how to do that, and probably you will start to feel like, okay, I understand, I feel I can start to do it. Because you you will see that, okay, people do that this way, people do that this way. Maybe you will find better way to do that. And I would not be surprised. Unfortunately, you will probably be so enthusiastic that you directly want to start doing the measurements. You will directly want to start the analysis, study what you do. No, you should stop at this point. Do not jump. Okay, it's completely normal to be enthusiastic, and this is really good. But before you do the real measurement, you need to prepare the protocol. Okay, it's I know it's kind of it breaks like the enthusiasm, but before doing the analysis, you must do the protocol. Remember, in this picture, doing research is like climbing this kind of mountain. Even if you like climbing a lot, and you wake up in the morning and say, oh yeah, yes, okay, we take some water and then we climb. Everybody will tell you it's a bad idea. You need to get prepared. Do you have the right shoes? Do you have enough food? Can you do that in one single day? Do you know where to sleep? Do you have the way to, maybe do you have a phone or a map? So you need to be prepared. And this is the purpose of the protocol. Here, okay. So the protocol is a document that must be prepared before, and this is extremely important, okay? Otherwise, you can really do bad science. I know bad science, it sounds really childish, but at this level, remember that good science means the protocol is before the research. So you do that before. And this document, once it's written, it should be unchanged and untouched. So once you start your research, you don't touch the protocol. What does this protocol contain? Really concrete and complete things, which are first the objective, in a really concrete way. What is the objective of the study? I will give you some examples so that you can understand clearly how to translate these points to your case. So first the objective, then really repartition of tasks. Who does what? Depending on competencies, depending on constraints, we will see some example, but really who does what? Who in the team is going to do which task? As early as possible, to highlight also why, because it's really easy once you are in the analysis to forget why you do something. You are so deep in the techniques, so deep in technical problems, or maybe you just like the stuff so much that sometimes you forget why in the first place you did that. And not just why, but when. Because of constraints, if you have the head in technical issues, you will forget your calendar, your deadlines. So make a calendar and only then consider the how with what. So how are you going, for instance, to ask people? Are you going to do a survey? Are you going to extract information from other articles? And then with what? The survey. Are you going to do that online with internet or with phone or per SMS or talk people in the street? A protocol can be a text. Ordinarily it's a text. But it can be also much more simple. It can just be just a table. Okay, just point, 1, 2, 3, I do that, then I do that. It doesn't need to be an extensive, complex text. It can even just be a diagram, so drawings. It doesn't need to be complex. It just needs to be concrete, to say exactly what, why, etc., as complete as possible, and untouched. This is extremely important. Once you define the protocol, you don't touch it anymore. I will give you an example of a domain where protocol is extremely important, and this is the drug development. So development of medicine. If you consider most of the drugs a doctor can give you, most of these drugs are the result of years of development. When I say years, sometimes it is decades. During these decades, people work on different molecules. Sometimes they work on thousands of molecules, and it's not just a question of pharmacology. You have also the question of the efficiency. Here I give you an example of the different phases from discovery to really the registration, which means the public can buy and use it. And then, of course, you have the question of medical chemistry, toxicology, human safety. You have also ethics. And it needs to be agreed by the government. And of course, because it's a company, there is the question of the return over income, the income over cost. So it's what I mean by that is that developing a medicine takes years, and so it takes a huge investment of millions, sometimes billions of dollars. If after 5 years you make a mistake because you did not think about this mistake in the protocol, maybe you have wasted millions of dollars and years of work. So in this domain of the development of medicines, the work of defining protocols and following protocols is an expertise per se. So some people in this kind of industry, their only job is to make protocols, and they are experts for that. I give you here a bit more information about each step, each element of the protocol. So the objective, who does what, why, when, how, and with what. This here repeats mostly what I have said when it comes to how it's really, how, for instance, you are going to collect data. So as I said, is that going to be by internet, by phone, per SMS, per WhatsApp? How is that going to be stored? And the best is, for instance, to take the example of a topic, which is the social happiness of the Kabul people. So the objective here will be what makes, for instance, what makes young Afghan people happy. And even here, by reading this sentence, I realized that it could be more complete. For instance, when we say young Afghan people, we say more urban, so people from big cities. And happy when 50 years ago, not today. So we could at least add some of these points. What makes young urban Afghan people happy in 2024? Now the next step would be who does what. So you could imagine a repartition of tasks where, because you are a group, each classmate reads an article and summarizes it to the other classmates, so that the bibliography is faster. Students can also, you can also prepare the survey together. Then here you describe in details the input of the survey. So we are going to ask about age, gender, education, for instance. These are all examples. And then in the who does what, you will also, for instance, specify that each student, each classmate is responsible for spreading the survey to make sure you get at as many people as possible. And of course, immediately you have the why. So the why is, why did we ask about the age or the religiosity or the income? Because we are interested, but what makes people happy? and maybe people with more money are more happy, or people who are more religious, or people who have bigger families. So you need to include them. So this is why it's important to keep asking about the why. Here you see I have said that the mood, so the mood is how you feel, could be noted as 1 to 5, rather than people say, oh today I don't feel okay, or I feel better. It's complex to evaluate. If you categorize the answers, so giving categories 1 to 5, it's going to make the analysis easier. So you see, by constantly asking yourself why we do that, you make sure that once you build a survey, it's directly related to what you want to do. The next step is when, and I give you here an example of what you should come with, which is a real calendar with deadlines. So what I mean by that is, for instance, different days, and you say, okay, from on the 10th of March, we close the survey, and then from 11 to 15, we do the analysis, to make sure that you don't miss deadlines, that you don't waste time. Because here, time is one of our stringent constraints. Then comes the question of how. In this particular example, it's obviously going to be a survey. You can do a survey in many different ways. You can just ask people directly. As I said, you can call them, you can write them letters here. But because of different constraints, like we want to have as many people as possible, it must be anonymous. We are going to, for instance, use an anonymous online survey. And if you remember, in the how, there was the data collection tool, but also data storage. Once you have these information, where do you store them? But they could be as an Excel file. On the computer, it's going to be shared among students and professors. You need to come also with how you're going to visualize the data, and how you're going to do some statistics. Like, for instance, are you going to compute the correlation at which significance level, so on and so forth. This point here, data visualization, statistics, it's something I have not talked to you about. You may already have knowledge on this, but the next lecture will cover this point, at least in a superficial way. And the last point is with what. Of course, you could do that everything by hand on paper, then you would write paper. Most of you have computers, some basic knowledge on Excel, some SPSS. If you pursue the lecture with me, I will teach you a really useful language called R. But basically the question with what is, which tool are you going to use to do this? So as a consequence, the assignments for the next week is to get a draft of protocol. So keep gathering articles if you haven't done yet. Keep reading articles, find inspiration, find ideas, and draft a protocol based on the who does what, the objective, how, when, and so on and so forth. If you have questions, of course, feel free to contact me, and I wish you good luck.